Welcome to Rise from the Ashes. Our podcast looks at various issues for families. We'll be talking with attorneys about personal and legal concerns having to do with divorce, custody, and parenting time. There are also a few topics about letting go, moving on, and new beginnings. Please keep in mind this podcast is only to inform and help to understand legal and personal issues as they relate to family law. It should not be considered as a replacement for a qualified family law attorney. When in doubt, please contact a professional. Rise from the Ashes, focusing on matters of the family, because family matters. Hi, and welcome to our podcast, Rise from the Ashes. I'm David Braddock, and I'll be your host for this podcast. We're talking again today with Susan Mundahl of Mundahl Law. How are you, Susan?
Doing great.
So we're calling this podcast Things to Remember When Representing Yourself.
That's right, David.
Why are we calling it that, Susan?
Well, the reason we're calling it that is I get an awful lot of individuals who call me on the phone and they want me to help them fix a matter that they've been trying to handle on their own. And I thought I'd give some tips today on things you should be doing when you're representing yourself.
How do we get started? If we want to represent ourselves, I imagine that there's resources available to do that?
For most civil matters in Minnesota, there is a website, and it's mincourts.gov. That's MNCOURTS.gov. And then once you get to the main website, it says Get Forms. And it talks about a whole list of items that they cover, like divorces, custody, parenting time, evictions, all those things. If it's there, you can actually get to those forms, and it has instructions and everything.
So there are instructions on the mincourts.gov website.
Right. Let's say you're going to do your own dissolution and you go look for the dissolution divorce section. Then you press on that button and then it will talk about a packet of information and you can download those forms and then you can do it yourself.
You've got the forms, you've got the instructions on how to use the forms. What's next?
Okay. Assuming you've read the forms directly, when you've figured it out yourself on exactly what you need to put in there, then there's the question of service. And you have to serve the other side because an action starts in Minnesota when the other party is served. And the important tip here is don't do it yourself.
When you say service, what do you mean exactly? It's how the documents are exchanged?
In one sense. Well, all of us have seen a movie where some guy comes up to the door or woman and says, "You've been served."
And they hand them a packet of papers or an envelope.
Right. And there are rules about this, and the rules say that it can't be yourself. It has to be anyone other than you that can serve it on another party so long as they're over 18 years of age.
What are other alternatives besides just someone you know that's over 18?
Well, you can also pay a process server. There are services in town here, such as Midwest Legal. Although if you're not in Minnesota, you're on your own. Just look up legal process.
Okay.
And see who does it. Or you can get a local sheriff's deputy to do it. And if you're going to use a professional or the sheriff's department, they have their own rules and it costs money to do it.
So even the sheriff is going to have a specified fee for what they would charge to do the service?
That's right.
Okay.
The other important thing to note is there's different kinds of service. And again, this is all in the Minnesota rules. The nice thing about Google nowadays is if you actually Google rules of service in Minnesota regarding divorce, Google will probably get you right there. The important thing to note is that the way the rules work is there's rules of civil procedure and there's service rules in there. And that's for most actions other than family matters. But in family in particular, and that's my area of expertise, it says that the service has to be on the person. So we had a case, and in this case, the other side used the civil process service rules, and they went and they served our client's mother. And they're like, yeah, good enough. And we're like, no.
So civil is different than family.
Yes. Civil says you can serve an adult in the household where the person lives.
Okay. So if the child answers the door, that's not good.
And then there's more rules regarding if you can't find a person, and there's alternative service rules. I'm just letting you know the tip. Make sure it's not you that serves them. Then if you need more information than that, talk to a qualified attorney.
I would imagine that there's some pretty stringent rules that would need to be followed if someone's going to take this all the way to court.
That's the irony of this, that when you are handling a matter yourself, what we call a self-represented individual, or pro se, that's the Latin for self-represented, you are expected by the Minnesota Supreme Court that you are going to follow all the rules of court here in Minnesota.
And what might those rules be?
Well, there's rules, David, for how to serve. There's timelines you have to follow. There's motion rules on what needs to be in your pleadings. There's rules on even what to wear in court and how to behave in court. There is a whole section in the Minnesota rules on all of these things.
How can someone find where these rules would be located?
Actually, the Minnesota legislature is in charge of keeping these rules online. And so if you just Google it, the Minnesota Rules of Court, it will take you to the statutory site revisor, revisor.mn.gov. You go there, and then it's going to tell you how to get the Minnesota Rules of Court.
You can just take each one of those points and follow it down, and it'll give you instructions on how to present yourself, what to wear, what the timelines are, motions.
Sure, it's all there, but there's a reason us attorneys go to law school for 3 or 4 years to learn all of these things. That's the irony of the system is, as a self-represented person, you're expected to know these things. And so that's why I'm giving you some tips today.
What should someone expect when they go to court?
Well, it depends on the type of matter it is. There's some actions that the courts are more familiar with having to deal with self-represented individuals.
Okay.
So like if you have an order for protection, or it's a small claims court, or something of that nature. The interesting thing is, are we looking at a motion or are we looking at pleadings? It is all different.
Okay.
But I'm just going to talk about, in general, when you show up for court, you should really at least be dressed nicely. You don't want the judge to look at you and think not nice things about you. I had one case where the young man actually had spilled Coke on his shirt right before, and so he went down to his sleeveless T-shirt.
Yeah.
And the judge actually kicked him out because in the rules of court, you can't be sleeveless. You have to show some decorum to the court. You can't wear hats. You can't chew gum. Understand that this is the judge's courtroom. And so you be unerringly polite with the court, no matter how mad you are. I have been known on occasion to say, "With all due respect, Your Honor," and then go on to talk about how the judge did something I didn't like, but you must always show courtesy to the judge.
Any other advice or tips that you might give a person that would be representing themselves when they go to court?
Yes, you need to understand about exhibits. There is a whole section in the Minnesota Civil Procedure Rules called Rules of Evidence. And again, you could Google Minnesota Rules of Evidence and see if something is admissible. But in general, what you want to do is you're going to ask permission of the court to have a document marked as an exhibit. Then you're going to ask the court for permission to show it to a witness if need be, or if it's something that you're trying to prove, you can simply ask the court, "Can I have this admitted?" And if there is an opposing party, the court will probably direct you to show it to the opposing party. In preparation for the hearing, though, have 3 copies. One for the court, one for yourself, and one for the opposing party. That's going to actually impress the judge very much.
If you have all 3 copies. What about after the court hearing?
I have some tips about that, too. Understand that, again, we're talking about more rules. These are timeline rules regarding how long it takes a judge to reach a decision in your matter. And on general civil matters, the usual rule of thumb for the judges is they have 90 days.
Okay.
Or 3 months. And it's my understanding that the Supreme Court withholds their paycheck if they don't issue a ruling within the 90 days. But understand that it is 90 days from the date the last submission is. Let's say you're in a court hearing and the judge says, "Oh, I'll give you an extra week to supply those additional documents." And so the timing would start at the end of that week.
Oh, okay.
And so I think that's important to know.
Okay, so the person that's representing themselves has now been to court, and after the hearing, we've received the decision from the judge. What happens next after the court's decision?
That's on you, but what you really should do is if you have won in the decision, so it came out in your favor,
Okay.
what you need to do is serve the other side with a copy of that order. It's called notice of filing. It specifically is a notice that states that you are being served with a copy of this order, and this is intended to start the appeal time running.
And the appeal is if the decision wasn't favorable for the other side, then they have the opportunity to appeal. What does that timeline look like?
In civil matters, it's generally 60 days. When you start the appeal period running, it gives notice to the other side that they have 60 days to raise the issue with the Court of Appeals. And that's a topic for a different podcast.
Okay. But there is a process, obviously, and rules for appeals. And as you say, we'll talk about that at another podcast.
Right. And, if someone really is lonely some night and wants to spend some time reading, they can read the Minnesota Rules of Court, and it's all in there.
All right. There we go. What if someone needs a little bit more assistance in how to represent?
Well, obviously, if it's in a matter not related to divorce or parenting time, an area that I would handle, they need to find out the name of an attorney that they might be able to do a consultation with that would give them some more information regarding their specific matter.
What about if it is something that's really specific, like a divorce?
We have just started offering a class. It's a do-it-yourself workshop on divorce. We're going to be doing it via Zoom because those are the days we live in. And it's once a month, and they can find the information out on mundalllaw.com. If they go to our classes section on the menu bar, under that it says DIY Divorce Workshops, and you can sign up there. There is a cost for it, but it's a lot less than what you're going to pay to have an attorney do your divorce. It's a fraction of that cost, and it is designed for the 80% of folks that are trying to do this on their own, and they're doing it badly.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Mundall Law website?
I think folks are going to find a wealth of information that is going to assist them in a lot of different family law matters. We do have the podcasts, we have the blogs. In addition to the do-it-yourself workshop, we also have answering your divorce questions that I do once a month for free. We also have other products and services that are available to folks to help assist them along the way, either in having us do the work for them or in helping them with even a portion of their divorce or custody or parenting time, estate planning, probate matter.
Thank you so much, Susan.
Oh, you bet, David. I hope this is helpful to everyone today.
You are listening to Rise from the Ashes, the podcast channel that takes a careful look at all things having to do with legal procedure within the family law process. Rise from the Ashes is sponsored by Mundall Law, who specializes in assisting families and individuals through the legal process with respect, dignity, and caring. Mundall Law is dedicated to helping people to solve their legal problems. You can visit the Mundall Law website at mundalllaw.com or call to schedule a consultation with one of their qualified family law attorneys. Rise from the Ashes, focusing on matters of the family, because family matters.